You've probably noticed something that doesn't quite add up. Homes in good neighborhoods, priced reasonably, passing inspections, sitting longer than they should. Offers fall apart. Buyers tour, nod, and then disappear. Nothing looks wrong, yet nothing moves. That contradiction is the story of this market. This isn't a crash, and it isn't fear. It's a behavioral shift. Buyers didn't vanish. They changed how they decide. The urgency that once forced fast offers has been replaced by pause, calculation, and second looks. If you're paying attention, you've felt this already, even if no headline explained it. What makes this moment dangerous is how quiet it is. Markets rarely announce transitions. They whisper through longer timelines and unfinished conversations. Homes that should sell don't, not because they're bad, but because the rules changed underneath them. This video exists to bring clarity, not panic. To explain what changed, why it matters, and how to read the signals before they become obvious. Subscribe and hit the bell, because the warning signs always show up before the headlines that people miss until it's too late. What's happening right now isn't that buyers disappeared. They're still out there, touring homes, scrolling listings, talking to lenders. What changed is how they decide. The market shifted from urgency to evaluation, and that single shift explains almost everything people find confusing today. During the rush years, buyers were trained to move fast. Hesitation felt dangerous. Waiting meant losing. Decisions were emotional because speed was rewarded. But that environment is gone. Not with a bang, but with a quiet reset. Buyers learned that rushing came with consequences, and now they're doing the opposite. They're slowing down on purpose. This isn't fear, it's recalibration. Buyers are no longer asking, how fast do I need to act? They're asking, what happens if I'm wrong? That question changes behavior immediately. A home that once triggered urgency now triggers analysis. Payments get stress tested. Insurance quotes get checked early. Future maintenance isn't brushed aside. Even good homes are treated like long-term commitments, not trophies to win. That's why deals feel fragile. Buyers tour twice. They bring parents. They sleep on it. They run the numbers again. Sometimes they walk, not because the home failed, but because the decision didn't feel strong enough to lock in for 30 years. From the outside, it looks like rejection. From the inside, it's caution. If you've noticed this and felt confused, you're not imagining it. This pattern is showing up everywhere at once, which is how you know it's real. Homes don't need to be overpriced to stall anymore. They just need to create uncertainty. When uncertainty appears, buyers delay, and delayed decisions quietly reshape markets. What makes this hard to spot is that nothing dramatic happens. No headlines, no panic, just slower movement and softer commitment. Sellers interpret it as bad luck. Agents blame seasonality. Buyers feel guilty for hesitating, but all of that misses the point. This is a collective shift in decision-making. Once buyers learn they're allowed to wait, waiting becomes the default. And once waiting feels rational, urgency doesn't come back easily. That's the new reality under the surface. If this explanation is already changing how you see what's happening around you, hit the bell now. Understanding the shift early is what separates people who react late from people who adapt calmly before the rest of the market catches up. Most buyers don't walk away because the house is bad. They walk away because the monthly stops making sense. This is the moment where emotion meets arithmetic, and arithmetic wins. At first, everything feels fine. The price looks reasonable compared to last year. The neighborhood feels right. The inspection comes back, clean enough. Emotionally, the buyer is already picturing furniture, routines, a future. That's the approval phase most sellers see and assume means safety. Then the spreadsheet opens. The mortgage payment is only the starting line. Property taxes are higher than expected. Insurance quotes arrive and feel nothing like the estimate from the listing. HOA dues add another fixed obligation, sometimes with vague language about future increases. Utilities don't look like the last apartment's bills. Maintenance isn't theoretical anymore. Roofs age. HVAC systems fail. Special assessments sit quietly in HOA minutes, waiting. Individually, none of these numbers feels fatal. Together, they stack. The total monthly creeps past a line the buyer didn't know they had until it was crossed. That's when the shift happens. The buyer stops thinking like a shopper and starts thinking like an operator. Operators don't ask if something is nice. They ask what happens if income changes, if taxes reset, if insurance rises again next year. They run scenarios. They look at worst cases, not best ones. A home can survive emotionally and still fail operationally. This is where many deals quietly die. Not at the showing, not at the offer, but late at night, staring at a payment breakdown that no longer feels flexible. Walking away doesn't feel dramatic in that moment. It feels responsible. This is also where loss aversion takes over. Buyers imagine being locked into a payment that squeezes every other part of life. Vacations disappear. Savings stall. Emergencies feel heavier. The fear isn't losing the house. It's losing freedom. Once that fear appears, the brain protects itself by stepping back. What's important to understand is that the home didn't change. The terms didn't suddenly worsen. The buyer simply stopped rounding down risk. They stopped assuming tomorrow would rescue today's math. This is why good homes sit. Sellers think buyers are being picky or ungrateful. Buyers feel guilty for hesitating. But the truth is simpler. The market trained people to ignore the full cost for years. Now buyers are relearning how to see it clearly. Clarity reduces anxiety, even when it kills a deal. Walking away hurts less than overcommitting. That's not weakness, that's maturity. It's also why many buyers feel relief after walking away. The tension lifts. The decision aligns with their values instead of their fear. Clarity restores control. Once buyers experience that relief, they don't unlearn it. They bring that standard to every showing, every offer, every counter. That's why the market doesn't snap back. It recalibrates around a calmer, firmer buyer. If you want to recognize where deals actually break before you're emotionally invested, hit the bell. This monthly reality check is where most buyers wake up, and once you see it, you never evaluate a home the same way again. From point forward, nothing feels automatic again. Inspections and appraisals didn't suddenly become harsher. They became honest again. For years, inspections were ceremonial. Buyers skimmed reports, waived objections, and treated defects as background noise because winning mattered more than understanding. Appraisals followed the same script. Values magically matched contract prices because emotion pushed everything upward. Stretching felt safe, even smart. That environment is gone. Today, inspections are no longer about reassurance. They're decision points. Buyers read every line. Roof age matters, electrical panels matter, drainage, grading, deferred maintenance, reserve notes, all of it matters. Not because the house is falling apart, but because each item represents future cost layered onto an already tight monthly. The inspection isn't killing the deal. It's revealing the true price. That realization restores control. When buyers see the full scope, they regain the right to choose instead of commit blindly. And once control returns, tolerance shrinks. What once felt acceptable now feels unnecessary. Buyers don't argue, they pause, they renegotiate. And if the numbers don't bend, they leave. Appraisals play a similar role, but quieter. They aren't emotional documents, they're comparative reality checks. When an appraisal comes in low, it doesn't accuse the home of being bad. It signals that the market no longer agrees with the stretch. Sellers often take this personally. Buyers don't. Buyers see an exit. This is where fear of being trapped surfaces. Buyers imagine paying above appraised value, carrying the gap in cash, then watching nearby homes sell for less months later. That scenario isn't hypothetical anymore. It's visible. Walking away feels safer than absorbing future regret. What's changed most is posture. Buyers no longer see contingencies as obstacles to overcome. They see them as protection. An inspection contingency is permission to reassess. An appraisal contingency is leverage, not weakness. These tools didn't disappear during the boom. Buyers were just afraid to use them. Now they use them calmly. Deals don't die with confrontation. They die with silence. A buyer stops responding quickly. A follow-up takes longer. A request for credits appears not as aggression, but as alignment. When sellers refuse to adjust, buyers don't escalate, they disengage. This confuses sellers because nothing went wrong. The home is still good. The location still works. The market just no longer rewards overreach. Understanding this reframes rejection. Buyers aren't being picky or fearful. They're being precise. Precision replaces urgency when leverage returns. Once buyers experience this shift, they don't unlearn it. They carry it forward, deal to deal, property to property. Each contingency exercised strengthens confidence. Each walked-away contract reinforces discipline. Over time, this behavior reshapes markets because sellers eventually respond to buyers who refuse to stretch, rush, or rationalize numbers that no longer cooperate with consequences felt slowly, then at once. Subscribe, because leverage doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly in inspections, in appraisals, and in the confidence to walk away from a deal that no longer earns commitment. Sellers aren't irrational, they're anchored. They remember a different buyer, one who rushed, waived, and competed. One who confirmed the price instead of questioning it. That memory is powerful. It becomes the reference point. Behavioral economists call this anchoring bias, but sellers feel it as fairness. The problem is that markets move faster than memory. Buyers change their behavior quietly, but sellers are still pricing for the version of demand that no longer exists. Intentions remain optimistic. Outcomes do not. This gap creates the illusion of rejection. Sellers believe buyers are being picky, cautious, or unserious. But buyers aren't rejecting the home. They're rejecting the price relative to time. Time is the silent killer here. Every extra week on market reshapes perception. Early on, buyers assume competition. Later, they assume resistance. Days on market don't just signal availability, they signal inflexibility. Sellers often respond by trimming instead of adjusting. A small cut here, another one there. Each reduction is meant to test the market, but to buyers, these micro moves communicate hesitation. They wonder what the seller is waiting for. They start waiting too. This is where social proof flips. In a hot market, seeing others bid makes buyers act. In a slow market, seeing listings sit makes buyers pause. Silence becomes information. Sellers feel this shift emotionally before they accept it intellectually. Showings drop, feedback thins, agents suggest adjustments. And still, many sellers hold. They don't want to be the first to concede. That delay has a cost. The longer a home sits, the more confidence drains from the transaction. Buyers stop imagining themselves living there and start imagining why no one else has. Price becomes suspect, not attractive. This is why buyers walk away from good homes. The quality didn't fail, the alignment did. When sellers price for yesterday, buyers choose tomorrow. For sellers, this is not a warning, it's an opportunity. Those who adjust early preserve momentum and dignity. Those who wait get adjusted by the market instead. Buyers don't punish honesty, they reward realism. And markets remember which sellers understood the shift. The hardest part is letting go of the story you told yourself about your home's value. That story was reinforced by neighbors, headlines, and past offers. But the market only responds to what exists now. Today's buyer is cautious, informed, and unwilling to absorb someone else's nostalgia. When sellers meet that buyer where they are, deals return. When they don't, homes stay visible but unsold. And that visibility quietly rewrites value. The choice is subtle but decisive. Adapt to the buyer you have or wait for one who may never return. The market is patient. It doesn't argue. It simply moves on. Those who move with it keep options. Those who don't feel abandoned by it. This shift is happening quietly, one listing at a time, whether sellers acknowledge it or not. Pay attention now, because pricing realism today determines leverage, outcomes, and peace of mind tomorrow. For everyone involved. If you sell or plan to, hit the bell now. Good used to be enough. A solid neighborhood, clean inspection, decent schools, nothing flashy. Buyers would lean in and fill the gaps with optimism. In 2025 and 2026, that instinct is gone. Not because buyers turned negative, but because the environment trained them differently. Good location isn't enough anymore if taxes keep rising faster than incomes. Good condition isn't enough if insurance resets every year without warning. Good price isn't enough if it only works under perfect assumptions. Buyers have learned that homes don't fail at the headline level. They fail at the margin. This is the mental shift most sellers miss. Buyers aren't asking, "Is this a good house?" They're asking, "Is this a safe decision if conditions change?" That question alone disqualifies many listings that would have sold easily a few years ago. Safety now means alignment. The price has to match the payment, not the memory. It has to leave room for rate changes, tax reassessments, HOA increases, and repairs that don't wait for better timing. Buyers want flexibility. The ability to absorb a hit without regret. This doesn't make them pessimists, it makes them operators. They're stress-testing downside, not fantasizing upside. They're imagining job changes, family shifts, economic noise, and asking whether this home still works when life gets inconvenient. That's why truly safe deals feel scarce now, not because inventory vanished, but because fewer homes meet higher standards. When buyers find one that does, they move decisively, but they won't compromise just to participate. This is also why walking away feels calm, not dramatic. Buyers don't feel loss when they pass on a deal that fails their standards. They feel relief. Relief that they didn't force alignment where it didn't exist. For sellers, this can feel personal, like the market is unfairly dismissing a home that is objectively good. But the market isn't judging effort or aesthetics. It's pricing risk. Homes that offer downside protection through realistic pricing, flexible terms, or future-proof costs still transact. Homes that rely on belief alone do not. This is the future pacing moment. The buyer who waits today isn't behind. They're positioning. They're learning how the market behaves when pressure replaces excitement. Good was enough when momentum carried mistakes. In this cycle, standards rise because consequences do. Buyers aren't disappearing. They're upgrading their criteria. This is how markets mature. Not with fireworks, but with discipline. The buyer who survives this phase doesn't win by being bold, but by being precise. They choose fewer homes, ask harder questions, and accept that saying no today is how they protect every yes they make tomorrow without regret later or pressure again. Hit the bell. Standards are rising, not falling. What separates smart buyers and sellers right now isn't access to secret data or perfect timing. It's posture. The willingness to slow down while others are still reacting emotionally. Once you understand why buyers are walking away from good homes, your behavior changes automatically. Smart buyers aren't hunting for bargains. They're hunting for alignment. They wait because waiting produces information. Days on market reveal seller urgency. Repeated price cuts reveal resistance breaking. Incentives reveal where payments stopped working. Instead of asking, "Can I win this house?" they ask, "What risk am I inheriting if I do?" That single question reshapes every offer. They model the downside before imagining the upside. They assume taxes rise, insurance resets, and repairs arrive early. They negotiate terms, not just price. Longer contingencies, seller credits, rate buydowns, repair escrows. They don't rush inspections or appraisals because those are no longer obstacles. They're leverage. And when a deal stops making sense, they walk away calmly, knowing that patience is now a competitive advantage. Smart sellers make a harder shift. They let go of who their buyer used to be and price for who the buyer is now. They understand that leverage erodes with time, not just price. Every extra week on market teaches buyers to hesitate. So they adapt early. They study recent pendings, not old closings. They price to the payment, not the headline. They offer clarity upfront, clean disclosures, transparent costs, flexible terms, so buyers don't have to imagine worst cases. These sellers don't chase the market downward. They meet it where it already is. That preserves momentum, credibility, and optionality. The result isn't a bidding war, but something more valuable in this phase: a clean contract that closes. The real advantage, though, is internal. You're no longer waiting for permission from headlines or experts to act. You can see behavior before outcomes. You notice when showings slow, when listings relaunch, when concessions normalize. You understand that markets move quietly first and loudly later. That awareness compounds. Each conversation, each showing, each quiet cancellation adds another data point. While others wait for certainty, you're building conviction through observation. You don't need the exact bottom or top. You need alignment with reality. And reality always whispers first, long before it shouts. This is where community matters. Thousands of individual decisions, all shifting at once, create the signal. When you share what you're seeing and listen to others doing the same, clarity sharpens. You're not early because you predicted something. You're early because you paid attention. That perspective keeps you calm, flexible, and prepared when others are forced into rushed, emotional decisions later under real pressure. Subscribe and hit the bell. Early clarity is the advantage most people miss. What smart buyers and sellers are doing right now isn't clever or aggressive. It's calm, it's deliberate, it's rooted in a shift most people haven't internalized yet. The market no longer rewards speed, it rewards clarity. Once you see that, your behavior changes without effort. Smart buyers are no longer trying to win homes. They're trying to avoid mistakes. They wait because waiting creates information. Time exposes seller flexibility, pricing tension, and which listings are built on hope rather than math. These buyers model risk before imagining upside. They assume insurance rises, taxes adjust, repairs arrive early, and liquidity matters later. That mindset turns emotion into structure. Instead of negotiating price alone, they negotiate terms. Inspection windows stay intact. Appraisals are treated as leverage, not threats. Credits, rate buydowns, repair escrows, and timelines matter more than bragging rights. And when a deal stops making sense, they walk away without drama, because walking away is no longer failure, it's discipline. Sellers who adapt early make an equally important shift. They stop pricing for yesterday's buyer and start positioning for today's one. They understand that leverage erodes with time, not just reductions. Every extra week on market reshapes perception. So they lead with realism instead of resistance. They study recent pendings, not old headlines. They price to the payment, not the peak. These sellers don't wait to be forced into concessions. They offer clarity up front. Clean disclosures, transparent costs, flexible terms. They remove uncertainty before buyers have to imagine it. That preserves momentum and control. The result isn't chaos or desperation. It's cleaner contracts and smoother exits in a slower environment. What this really gives you is perspective. You stop needing predictions. You start reading behavior. You notice when showings thin, when listings relaunch, when incentives normalize, when silence replaces urgency. That awareness compounds quietly, week by week, while others wait for headlines to tell them how to feel. This is where community sharpens insight. Thousands of individual decisions shifting together create the signal. When you share what you're seeing and listen to others doing the same, patterns become obvious faster. You're no longer reacting late, you're observing early. And that observation creates confidence without arrogance. You don't need to convince anyone you're right. You simply move differently. You choose timing over tension, structure over storytelling, and flexibility over ego, while the market slowly teaches everyone else the same lesson. That awareness compounds into real leverage over time. You're not ahead because you guess the future. You're ahead because you're paying attention in the present. That posture keeps you flexible, patient, and prepared while others are rushed into emotional choices. Subscribe and hit the bell. Early clarity is the advantage most people miss. This moment feels uncomfortable because it breaks a story many people relied on. For years, movement meant safety. Speed meant strength. Buying meant winning. Now buyers are walking away, and it's tempting to call that fear or collapse. It isn't. It's a reset of expectations, not a failure of the system. Markets aren't broken. They're renegotiating terms between price, payment, and patience. When buyers pause, they're not rejecting homes. They're rejecting risk they no longer need to absorb. That's not weakness. That's adaptation. And adaptation is how markets heal without drama. If you're watching this and feeling unsettled, that's normal. Transitions always feel louder from the inside. But notice what isn't happening. There's no panic selling, no mass exits, no forced decisions at scale. What you're seeing instead is restraint returning after years of excess urgency. That restraint is healthy, even if it feels unfamiliar. This is the moment where identity matters. You can be someone waiting for permission to act, or someone learning how to read behavior before prices move. The people who benefit most from this cycle won't be the boldest or the fastest. They'll be the clearest. That's why this channel exists. Not to predict headlines, but to notice shifts early and think them through together. The comments matter here. Share what you're seeing in your market. Days on market. Price. Changes. Buyer behavior. Those small observations add up to real insight when we connect them. We're going to keep tracking how this reset unfolds, where leverage quietly returns, and which signals appear next. Stay subscribed. This cycle rewards the prepared. Pay attention, stay patient, and remember that calm thinking today often becomes quiet advantage tomorrow, especially for those willing to learn before acting when uncertainty feels loud. But opportunity is still forming right now for observant people.